What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. As always, I'm your host, Zach Cronin, and unlike our regularly scheduled programming, I do not have a full-length show for you today, but I wanted to talk about all of the developments going on with Ghislaine Maxwell. If you remember the last time we spoke, Ghislaine Maxwell was heading into a meeting with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche to discuss further details about the Epstein files. That was on Friday, I believe, Thursday or Friday. Since then, Miss Maxwell has had this meeting with Todd Blanche. It's reported, although there has been much secrecy surrounded it, that she and Blanche sat down for a combined total of 9 hours over 2 days. Now, this is not particularly noteworthy in itself. I don't believe that any new information is going to be uncovered. I don't believe that we're going to have earth shattering details about further goings on Jeffrey Epstein's island. What's most noteworthy about this whole situation is the lengths that the Republican Party is going to continually cover up this whole saga with Jeffrey Epstein, but more specifically, Jeffrey Epstein's connection to Donald Trump. A video I posted a couple days ago talked about one of these distractions. They are trying to claim that Barack Obama is a traitor for the misinformation he sowed over Donald Trump's 2016 presidential election victory, all of which has been disproved multiple times by multiple different bodies. There have been five different investigations done by by four or five different parties, Senate committees, independent councils, things of that nature. There are more reports about aliens now, of course, because Donald Trump is seemingly closer and closer to actually being tied to Jeffrey Epstein, even though, again, that is something that is well documented. The personal relationship that these two individuals had before Jeffrey Epstein allegedly killed himself in prison back in, what was it, 2020. The reporting aspect of this is courtesy of ABC. We're gonna just skim through this pretty quickly. Ghislaine Maxwell, whose sources told ABC News initiated the meeting with the Department of Justice, answered questions for about 9 hours over 2 days after being granted a limited form of immunity. Sources said the immunity allowed Maxwell to freely answer Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche's questions without fear that her responses could later be used against her. These sources said the so-called proffer immunity is commonly granted to individuals. Prosecutors are seeking to make cooperations in a criminal case. Maxwell has already been tried, convicted, and sentenced for sex trafficking underage girls. Ghislaine Maxwell, over these last 5 years, has sat in a prison cell, sentenced to 20 years in prison for her involvement in the Jeffrey Epstein pedophile ring. She, make no mistake about it, was not a small bean in this. She was the deputy. She was Jeffrey Epstein's lieutenant. She was largely responsible for initiating the procurement of all of these minors. Not only that, she also herself was involved in assaulting these minors. The DOJ did not immediately respond to a request for comment. A lawyer for Maxwell did not immediately respond either. The second meeting between Maxwell and Blanche lasted for about 3 hours. Maxwell's attorney, David Marcus, told ABC News afterward, quote, "There have been no asks and no promises." Marcus said Maxwell was asked about maybe 100 different people during her interview with the Deputy Attorney General. He said she answered every question. Quote, "She didn't hold anything back." I am curious as to who these 100 people specifically are. There is a lot of speculation running rampant online that, and we will get to this a little bit later on, Donald Trump is going to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell after she admits that Donald Trump was not actually involved with Jeffrey Epstein at all. Donald Trump actually had no idea who Jeffrey Epstein was, and that the only people on this list are Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, who is definitely connected with Jeffrey Epstein, Kamala Harris, probably like a whole bunch of contractors who Donald Trump didn't like when he was building all of his real estate properties. He declined to be specific about who Maxwell was asked about or whether she provided information about others who might have allegedly committed crimes against victims, as Blanche said he was seeking. Quote, "We haven't asked for anything. This is not a situation where we are asking for anything in return for testimony or anything like that," Marcus added on Friday. Of course, everyone knows Miss Maxwell would welcome any relief. Blanche didn't speak to reporters upon his arrival at the federal courthouse in Tallahassee, Florida. On social media, Blanche said he would reveal what he learned from Maxwell, quote, "at the appropriate time." The first meeting between Maxwell and Blanche on Thursday lasted for 6 hours. Maxwell is currently appealing her 20-year prison sentence for child sex trafficking and other offenses in connection with Epstein, the deceased financier and convicted sex offender. Quote, "We don't want to get into the substance of the questions," Marcus said. "There were a lot of questions and we went on all day and she answered every one of them. She never said, 'I'm not going to answer,' never declined. It is almost unheard of for a convicted sex trafficker to meet with such a high-ranking Justice Department official, especially one who used to be the president's top criminal justice attorney." This is an unheard of situation. There has never before been a sitting president of the United States, twice elected, who is connected to the most prolific pedophile that the world has ever seen. There is nothing normal about this. There is nothing normal about Donald Trump's presidency. But this scandal is legitimately, it's legitimately freakish that this is happening. It is legitimately insane and extraordinary that he was not impeached when it originally came out that he had a close personal friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. It is remarkable that this man was voted into office with people knowing this baggage, that he is credibly linked to multiple individuals who are responsible for having victimized thousands of young girls. It is sickening. It is sickening. ABC News chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce asked President Donald Trump on Maxwell if clemency is on the table for Maxwell. Quote, "I can't go on about that now because, it is a very sensitive interview going on." Trump responded. He went on to call Blanche a, quote, "great attorney," and, quote, "I don't know exactly what's happening, but I certainly cannot talk about pardons." Trump was also pressed by ABC News' Bruce if he can trust what Maxwell is telling the DOJ during these interviews. Quote, "Well, he's a professional lawyer. He's been through things like this before." Has he? Has he been through? Has he been through a high-profile criminal sex trafficking ring before? I'm just reading into it for fun. After Trump's comments on Friday about clemency, ABC News asked Maxwell's attorney whether that gave her an incentive to tell Blanche what he wanted to hear. Quote, "No," Marcus said, "she wants to tell the truth." Marcus said Maxwell's legal team has not been approached. Marcus said Maxwell's legal team has not approached Trump about a pardon, but suggested it could happen in the future. And we do have audio of this as well that we will get to. Quote, "We haven't spoken to the president or anyone about a pardon just yet. And listen, the president this morning said he has the power to do so. So we hope he exercises that power in the right and just way," he said. Annie Farmer, who testified against Maxwell at trial, questions why Maxwell was granted a meeting with the Deputy Attorney General in the first place. Quote, "It's very disappointing that these things are happening behind closed doors without any input from the people that the government asked to come forward and speak against her in order to put her away. There were so many young girls and women that were harmed by her. Thousands, guys. Thousands. At least 1,000 between her and Jeffrey Epstein." Maxwell's attorney said on Friday she's been treated poorly for the last 5 years and is grateful to be able to meet with Blanche as she appeals her sex trafficking conviction and seeks to leave prison. I know that this is a tangent. I know that this guy's doing it for the paycheck, but this is a crazy thing, dude. This is a crazy thing to say. It's just seeing it is it's mind-blowing. Quote, "If you look up scapegoat in the dictionary, her picture would be next to the definition. She's keeping her spirits up as best as she can. This guy is working for this payday." Oh my God, scapegoat. Scapegoat, Ghislaine Maxwell, the pedophile herself, a scapegoat. Blanche's meetings with Maxwell come as the Justice Department has tried to quiet calls from Senate Republicans to release more information about Epstein and his interaction with high-profile figures. And it comes as questions swirl about Trump's connection to Epstein and reports that his name appears in the Epstein files. The Wall Street Journal reports that Pam Bondi told Trump in May that his name was mentioned in the Epstein files multiple times, along with other high-profile people. Trump denied that account, and appearing in the files is not necessarily indicative of any wrongdoing. Okay. Quote, I want all the information out, said Josh Hawley. Just put everything out, make it as transparent as you can. The Justice Department, that was Lindsey Graham who said that second quote. The Justice Department said earlier this month that it planned to release no additional information despite an earlier commitment to do so. Remember, Pamela Bondison, said the Epstein files are on my desk. And then the administration clarifies and says, actually, no, the Epstein files don't exist. 300 million people are having a schizophrenic hallucination about Jeffrey Epstein. This is mass hysteria. And then after that, the White House clarified again that Donald Trump that the Epstein files exist, but Donald Trump is not mentioned in them. Subsequently of that, the Epstein files are a Democrat hoax. Now we've reached a point where the files exist, but Donald Trump is not in them. And it's only Democrats that are in those files. As I mentioned earlier, the conservative media response to this is what is driving me bonkers. I'm not necessarily surprised by their hypocrisy here, but I am a little bit. I'm actually kind of confused as to why conservatives are taking this angle. I, probably because I'm a fucking dumbass, thought that this unprincipled group of demons actually cared about pedophilia and actually gave a shit about the deep state orchestration of a global child sex trafficking ring. But I was fucking wrong. The kill your local pedophile crowd actually does not give a fuck about pedophilia. We've seen this play out many times before. Libs of TikTok likes to report on grooming and how trans people are actually extremely dangerous to young children. But yet every so often, there's a prominent conservative pastor or someone who is a conservative commentator, and they get busted with CP. And then Chaya Raichik is too busy with her fucking fist up her ass to report on that. So why am I surprised? I don't know. I think, again, it just tracks to me being a fucking dumbass. I have another dumbass here in my presence, Greg Kelly, who is a host on Newsmax. Newsmax is one of the premier Trump dick suckers. I'm like two hands sloppy style. He says outright that Ghislaine Maxwell, in this instance, is a victim.
Subpoenaed. Let's find out, what is this all about? And she's also been subpoenaed by the Oversight Committee. I think this is great. I do have a feeling that she just might be a victim.
Bro, what do we do with this people? What do we do with these people? How are you allowed to function in society as this prominent of a person and say that a woman who directly victimized thousands of girls, or at least 1,000 girls, is a victim? The logic here is so disconnected from reality that there's nothing for me to even commentate over. Greg Kelly thinks that this is a witch hunt. For what reason? Newsmax isn't even that prominent of a news network. Your audience is not that big. You are defending pedophilia for the love of the game. You are trying to launder the actions of a child sex trafficker for the love of the game.
Might be. There was a rush to judgment. There was a lot of chaos there for a while. All right. Granted, she hung out with Jeffrey Epstein.
She hung out. Bro, they were fucking. They had sexual relations with one another. They were boyfriend and girlfriend. They were besties. They were two peas in a fucking pod, Greg Kelly. They didn't just hang out. This is so sinister. the talking about this situation with this level of nonchalance should be a fucking crime. You should not be allowed to be on television if you're assessing this situation to this degree. This is so disingenuous. This is such a smack in the mouth to all of the victims who have come out against Ghislaine Maxwell. All of those victims that Republicans in Congress care, quote unquote, care about protecting. So much so that they are using these victims as the reason why they can't release the Epstein files. We don't want to usher any more trauma onto these victims. We don't want to put their personal information out there. And I agree with that. What I disagree with is using that as a reason not to release the files, because you can anonymize the victims. You don't have to put the victims out there. Nobody who is clamoring for the release of the Epstein files actually wants these victims to have to relive these traumatic events. All we want are for the the individuals who perpetrated these crimes to be brought to justice.
I know that's apparently not good, but
No, yeah, bro, you figured it out. You figured it out. It is not good to hang around with pedophiles. Remember, Jeffrey Epstein is at least a one-time convicted sex offender. At least a one-time convicted sex offender. If Donald Trump is not connected to this, why is the media response to this degree? Explain it to me.
For how long now? 20 years. A 20-year sentence. Well, Alan Dershowitz is one of the greatest attorneys who ever lived, and he has this to say about the Ghislaine Maxwell situation, speaking with Newsmax veteran Eric Bolling.
Should Ghislaine Maxwell be behind bars?
She shouldn't be, but she is. She is really serving Jeffrey Epstein's sentence after he committed suicide. There was no one else to prosecute because there was no real information against anybody else. And so they went after her and they sentenced her to a sentence that would have been appropriate for Epstein, but not at all appropriate for her. And so she's...
God. Why am I laughing, you may ask? Let me respond with a question. If you're new to this case, do you know who Alan Dershowitz is? Because I know who Alan Dershowitz is. People who have covered this case since its inception know who Alan Dershowitz is. Alan Dershowitz was Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer. Why the fuck are we bringing in Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer to talk about this? He's serving... Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself in prison, first of all. Ghislaine Maxwell is not serving Jeffrey Epstein's time. She is serving her own time for the role that she played in Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. This is like interviewing the wolf after he killed all of your fucking chickens. Ghislaine Maxwell should be in prison. She should probably be in prison for longer than 20 years, especially as Yashir Ali points out. At least 40 women have credibly accused Ghislaine Maxwell of either directly abusing them, grooming them, or facilitating their sexual exploitations on behalf of Jeffrey Epstein. Some of them have detailed these allegations on camera. That is an enormous amount of criminal evidence. And again, in this case, like what everyone is refusing to acknowledge, at least on the conservative side, is that this isn't just he said, she said. There is credible witness and victim testimony in the Jeffrey Epstein case against Ghislaine Maxwell, not just Jeffrey Epstein.
Feeling now, and I hope the appeal will be granted. She deserves to be out.
Gross.
She deserves to be...
Gross. I know that I'm going to hell, right? But I know that Alan Dershowitz and I will not be in the same level of hell. I may be on like the first or second level because, as some of you have pointed out in the comments, I'm a little vulgar, you know? I swear sometimes. I say fuck and shit and piss. But at least I'm not running defense for the fucking Karl Malone of pedophilia. I mean, that's kind of redundant, actually. But you know what I'm saying. Alan Dershowitz, is probably in the 8th level of hell. He might be maybe like a step or two below Joseph Stalin, I would say. Below Osama bin Laden. maybe only one below. Actually, he might be worse than Osama bin Laden. They might be on the same level. Actually, I don't know. Maybe I'm saying a little bit too much. But again, all I know is that Alan Dershowitz is going to be so deep in hell. He's going to have his own wing.
Out. And maybe she never deserved to be in there in the first place. Now, how could you say such a thing? I mean, these are perverts. These are child molesters. We've heard that from whom? From the media? From prosecutors?
Dude.
Prosecutors prosecuted President Trump over nothing. I don't know,
my God.
but I'm skeptical of everything
Dude,
and everybody these days, and you should be
This
too.
is so insane. Greg Kelly is a fucking scumbag. I can't even find other words to describe it. I'm going strictly ad hominem. This guy is a fucking piece of shit. This guy is human garbage. You are skeptical of everybody and everything nowadays. You are even skeptical of the highly documented, highly reported, and highly prosecuted sex criminals that are Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Jesus fuck, dude. As mentioned earlier, Donald Trump is not currently thinking about a pardon, but this is something that I have the power to do. As you guys know, I am the president of the United States. I've actually been president of the United States in perpetuity since 2008, even though I didn't run, but if I did have run, I would have beaten Barack Obama by 175 million votes. Now, as president, I have many powers. One of those powers is having a Diet Coke button put in the Oval Office, but I do also have the power to pardon people. And although Ghislaine Maxwell, who I don't know, by the way, I don't even know if I'm saying her name properly, although I don't even know if she's real, to be honest, I could pardon her, but I don't know if I'm going to.
Would you consider a pardon or a commutation for Ghislaine Maxwell if
It's something I haven't thought about. It's really something. It's something I'm allowed to do it, but it's something I have not thought about.
But you wouldn't rule it out, sir.
Why has
She's getting pardoned, bro. I don't know if you're still optimistic about this situation, as I'm not. If you are optimistic, I'm not trying to bring you down. I think you should retain that level of optimism. I think it's good not to be so pessimistic about everything all the time, like I am, and how I'm cynical and nihilistic at points. But it's just, man, you see these things play out over and over. Not obviously the same exact detail, but she's getting pardoned, man. She's gonna tell Todd Blanche that Donald Trump is not in the Epstein files. Wink, wink, nod, nod. I don't think that Ghislaine Maxwell is going to go so far as to say that it's exclusively Democrats. I do think that she is going to be relatively truthful. I don't know how much relatively is. I do think that she's going to make it seem as unbiased as possible, but I do know that she is itching for that presidential pardon, and she's going to tell Todd Blanche that Donald Trump never even thought about texting Jeffrey Epstein. Donald Trump was so locked in doing racism against the Central Park Five that he had no time to be on Jeffrey Epstein's sex plane. Oh, those 7 times that Donald Trump was in the flight log, I forged those. I made that up as a prank. That's the type of shit that she's going to say. And I don't know what the reaction is going to be. I really don't. A lot of times, you know what the MAGA base is going to do. You know what the media apparatus is going to do. The media is a lot more predictable than the American electorate. The media is going to go wherever Donald Trump goes because that is where they make their money. They make their money as Trump dick suckers. And it's worked for them. It's worked for them over his two terms. But the American electorate is a very fickle voting block, especially now with the polarization within the Republican Party between MAGA Republicans and non-MAGA Republicans. I believe that there are more non-MAGA Republicans, and especially independents when you lump them in there as well, than there are MAGA Republicans. That piece of the block is definitely not happy with how this is going. The MAGA base, they're probably conflicted on this. Anecdotally, I know that people whom are in my life who are MAGA, they don't ever talk about Jeffrey Epstein. They don't ever talk about Donald Trump. Now, I don't know if that's because they don't care or if that's because they understand the implication in this. But if Ghislaine Maxwell says that Donald Trump is not involved, his base is going to be like, see, Donald Trump is not a pedophile. We always knew he wasn't a pedophile, even though if we remove the whole Jeffrey Epstein saga, there's still him going into beauty pageants with like the changing rooms of beauty pageants with 12 and 13-year-old girls. There was one time he judged a modeling competition with 14 and 15-year-olds. Like, this guy's a fucking creep, man. He's a fucking creep. He's an old creepy ass man. That fallout is going to be what's most interesting to me. To close out, Donald Trump is spiraling, and I'm not saying this as a joke. He has legitimately no idea how to handle this situation, and it's because he's a fucking dumbass, and everyone in his administration is fucking dumb. If he wanted to make it seem like he actually wasn't in the Epstein files, he would have come out and said that, I'm confident I am not in the Epstein files, even though that doesn't work because, again, his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein is very well documented. But constantly flipping the story, changing the details, trying to deflect from it, makes him look more and more guilty, at least to someone with a functioning brain, someone who can analyze the context of the situation and maybe not definitively say that he is guilty, but definitely say that he is not handling this properly. Now, Donald Trump is calling for the arrest of Kamala Harris, Al Sharpton, Oprah Winfrey, and I believe Beyonce. This is courtesy of ASIN. He posted a screenshot from Donald Trump on Truth Social. I'm looking at the large amount of money owed by the Democrats after the presidential election and the fact that they admit to paying, probably illegally, $11 million to singer Beyonce for an endorsement. She never sang, not one note, and left the stage to a booing and angry audience. $3 million for, quote-unquote, expenses to Oprah. $600,000 to a very low-rated TV anchor, Al Sharpton, a total lightweight, and others to be named for doing absolutely nothing. These ridiculous fees were incorrectly stated in the books and records. You are not allowed to pay for an endorsement. It is totally illegal to do so. Can you imagine what would happen if politicians started paying for people to endorse them? All hell would break out. Kamala and all of those that received endorsement money broke the law. They should be prosecuted. This is great. This is great. He's just fucking lost it. He then said that media networks who do propaganda for the Democratic Party should lose their broadcasting rights, which is just fucking awesome. That's something that we'll cover in an episode later this week, most likely. What's funny about this is, I know I'm reading too much into it, but Donald Trump is basically like, we need to ban lobbying. We only need small dollar donations from working class individuals, but only for Democrats. Elon Musk can still give me $200 million for fun. Miriam Adelson can still give me $200 million for fun. His, like, this is just fucking insane. Like, to call for these people to be arrested is absolutely preposterous. Remember, guys, this is the president of the United States who is currently connected to the most prolific pedophile of all time. And he's openly capping for the arrest of 3 highly prominent black Democrats just because they cashed a check. This is quite possibly my favorite clip. This is of the whole situation. Donald Trump being like, don't look at me. Look at everybody else who was on Jeffrey Epstein's plane, but don't look at me. I was in the back with my eye mask on. This is him. Where was he? Oh, before he left for Scotland a couple days ago. Just listen to it, bro. Listen to it.
Get out of prison. Well, he's a professional lawyer. I think he's been through things like this before. But, you should focus on Clinton. You should focus on the president of Harvard, the former president of Harvard. You should focus on some of the hedge fund guys. I'll give you a list. These guys lived with Jeffrey Epstein. I sure as hell didn't. Thank you very much.
Bill Clinton, did you know this? That him and Jeffrey Epstein were roommates. I only rode the plane. I was very friendly with Bill Clinton because, as you remember, I was a Democrat for much of the 80s and the 90s. But I did not live with Jeffrey Epstein. I merely visited his island. Bro, where is his team? Where are his handlers? Where are his fucking children? Where is Don Jr.? Where's Eric Trump? Where's Ivanka? Where's Barron? Where the fuck is anyone who needs to say, Dad, shut the fuck up. You're not helping yourself not look like a pedophile here. Don't watch me watch TV type shit from the president. Again, in a situation where he's connected to a highly prolific pedophile. Now, don't get it twisted. Bill Clinton, all of these rich and powerful money movers on Wall Street, the former president of Harvard, I don't quite recall who he's talking about. Stephen Hawking, he could fucking talk about for all I care. Remember, these people are also implicated in these files and connected to Jeffrey Epstein. But the difference here is that they've all shut the fuck up about it. But Donald Trump is such a raging narcissist. He has to speak openly and verbosely on every situation that arises. He has such main character syndrome that he cannot let a situation that involves him go untalked about. Now, obviously, he has to address this situation. It is of immense magnitude what Donald Trump is connected to. But his team is going about it in entirely the wrong way. What makes all of this even more frustrating for someone like myself, someone who preys on the downfall of demons like this, is when you have someone who is this narcissistic, their narcissism is typically their downfall. But in this instance, I know nothing's going to happen. I know that Donald Trump is going to have his name, quote unquote, cleared somehow. But above all else, I know that Donald Trump is not going to face any prison time from this. Even still, I want Ghislaine Maxwell to come out and say that Donald Trump is a pedophile, that Donald Trump was connected to Jeffrey Epstein, because that hopefully will push Congress to finally fucking do something about this. Whether it be subpoena for the release of the files, whether it calls for an impeachment of Donald Trump, we need some level of justice for these victims. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out this video. Thank you guys so very much for coming to hang out with me today. Everything I'm associated with is linked down below. Follow me on TikTok, Twitter, subscribe to the channel, leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Go and follow the show over on Spotify as well. As always, stay safe, stay sane, and I will see you in the next one.